Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Diamond Kings, the weekly YouTube talk show brought to you by the SportsKings.com media network. As usual, I'm your host, David Whitlock, down here in the Southwest, Houston, Texas. We have another week of exciting baseball happenings to discuss. Particularly, we're going to start with Josh Hamilton. It's been a subject every week. Now he's on the move. He'll be joining me here in the state of Texas up north for the Texas Rangers. That move is expected to be formalized tomorrow. We've got 2 games down in the Subway Series. I got my New York Subway Series hat on. Those are split so far, so we'll talk some analysis of that. We've had more Royals brawls this week, this time with the White Sox. And then late-breaking news, words traveling out that Adam Wainwright is out for an extended period of time, maybe the season. They're going to look at the ankle, Achilles. He got hurt yesterday, Saturday, batting actually, trying to bat and run. So lots to discuss. Joining me this week is, for the first time this season, is our man on the West Coast from Murrieta, California, Lorenzo Mejia. How are you, Lorenzo?
Doing great, David. Thanks for having me.
Man, great to have you back. It's been a long time, and you were telling me that we've had a little bit too much East Coast bias, so now we need a West Coast guy to straighten us up. And joining us again this week is Michael Prosser from Florence, South Carolina. How are you, Michael?
Fat and sassy, minus the fat and the sassy, but you know how it is.
That's right. Great to have you with us too. So let's jump right into it. Big news late this week. Josh Hamilton, of course, we've talked about his relapse into substance abuse, followed by what was kind of a distancing of the team, kind of distanced itself from him, particularly owner Artie Moreno. Some of the players and coaches were kind of supporting him, but it was becoming apparent that it wasn't going to work in LA anymore. He either wasn't going to play this year or needed to be traded, and his former team, the Texas Rangers, stepped right up and cut a deal for him. It looks like it's just if they get Hamilton and pay $15 million and the Angels get the rest of the salary, no other players seem to be on the move for this. So we'll start with out in LA and Southern California with Lorenzo. What's the feeling out there? What are people saying about this? Are they glad to have him gone? Do the Rangers get a steal here, or they just got a mound of problems they have to deal with now?
The fans are glad that they got rid of him. It's just another bad free agent signing by Artie Moreno along the lines of Vernon Wells. With Vernon Wells, same thing. They signed him for a 5-year deal. After 2 years, he was done, and he was right on the bench. So it's a good thing they're going to get rid of him. It just hurts at the salary that they're going to have to eat so much of the cost and not get anything in return. But ultimately, they're stacked in the outfield. They have Cole Calhoun. They got Mike Trout. They'll be fine. It's just good to get him off the team. He was a cancer on the team, and he just brought the team down. And ultimately, we don't need that.
That makes sense to me. From a Houston standpoint, my issue is we have another version of Michael joining us. My issue with them is going to Texas, in particular. Playing for the rivals. If he catches that lightning in a bottle, both my Astros and your Angels might be looking at in the standings. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on this move by the Rangers and the Angels?
Well, I mean, good for him. He goes back to a spot where he produced, which is something that he hadn't really done in LA. I think the most he only hit home run-wise, he may have got to 20 home runs. I remember 16, maybe 20. The guy was at least a 25-30 guy in Arlington, 100 RBIs almost guaranteed. I think the most he only had was like 67 out west. But I still can't help but to feel bad for the guy just because of the problems that he deals with. It is a disease. It is a sickness. But the support, lack thereof that he got out in LA is probably even sicker than the disease that Hamilton is crippled with. I mean, that's just disgusting. I really feel bad for the guy. I kind of lost a little respect for Artie out there. I mean, come on, man. I mean, that's a guy that you hope to bring in to help your team get over the top. And, at some point it looked like that was going to be the piece. It obviously wasn't. And, I mean, it's just – I just hope that Josh and the rest of I hope both sides just move on from this because obviously this didn't work. And, you kind of just hope he moves on, and gets back to where he needs to be, not only mentally but physically. I mean, he's coming off his shoulder surgery. He's not played yet. He may not play till even after the All-Star break. And it's going to be an upgrade for the Rangers. I mean, you've got Shin-Soo Choo in the outfield, who hasn't had any good days since Cleveland. And I think that's about it. I don't know anybody else on that roster, really, besides Adrian Beltre, because everybody else is either injured or, gone. I mean, you don't hear about Elvis Andrews anymore. You don't hear about Derek Holland. You don't hear about Neftali Feliz. You don't hear about this Texas Rangers team anymore, which is, it's kind of weird, because let's not forget 4 years ago, not even 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, this team was one out away from a World Series championship. I mean, you don't just disappear like that overnight. So hopefully this is a spark that, this Texas Ranger team needs to, become relevant again.
Yeah, I hear you. Of course, I don't want the Rangers to do well because that'd be against my Astros. But they've got some young talent there. It'll remain to be seen whether he can capture that magic. Any final thoughts on, since Michael had a comment, Lorenzo, any final thoughts on Michael's comments or anything like that?
No, I just know that Josh Hamilton's selling his $17 million home in Newport Beach, and he's going through a divorce. So it's going to be a tough time personally. And like Michael was saying, it is a disease, it's sad, but ultimately he did it to himself. And yeah, I'm just thinking about that $17 million house in Newport Beach, which is a beautiful house. That's what I keep thinking about. Right. But yeah, he'll be fine.
So maybe we can pool our money together and pay to wash his pool or something like that.
Yeah, it'd be really nice.
I've got about 400 right now. What do you guys got?
Right, not 17 million. That's leaving less.
We're on our way.
To pay for him. So next subject, one of the big series this weekend. It's a little bit different now that we have 15 teams in each league. There used to be that portion of the schedule where everybody was playing interleague, and you get your Chicago battles of Chicago, the freeway series out west, subway series in New York. But here, just in the first few weeks, we've got our first Subway Series. And going into it, both teams were either in first place or tied for first place. Both had kind of surprised a little bit. Maybe the Yankees were probably only surprising because they started out so badly, and then they turned it around. The Mets were on a 11-game winning streak at the time the series started. Then Friday night, the Yankees took it to them pretty good, 6-1. Then yesterday, the Empire Strikes Back with the Mets and Matt Harvey getting the win pretty easily. It's something like 7-1. And then the rubber games tonight. But what are your thoughts kind of on this series as well as these two teams' prospects? Are these two, one or both going to make the postseason? Neither makes the postseason. And is this series still relevant? This time we'll start with Michael.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think the score was 8-2, not 7-1. But I mean, good. I enjoyed this because usually when it comes up to the Subway Series, we haven't really seen a good Subway Series since the 01 World Series, and I don't even really think that one was really that great. With the exception of Mike Piazza. I mean, I miss that guy. Mike Piazza was just the best. But anyways, I digress. Good for Batman. Good for Matt Harvey. Probably the one bright spot on my fantasy team this week. We'll get to that in a minute, though. Dave has been crushing me this week. It has been. Right. We were talking about this earlier. It has not even been a fight. Thanks, David Price. Stand-up job the other day. But I've really forgotten about this rivalry because the Mets are usually so bad, and the Yankees are. The Yankees are always going to be relevant no matter what. And even when they have bad teams, like let's go back to those post George Martin era Yankees of the late 70s, early 80s when the Yankees were just awful, or even the early 90s before the Steinbrenner buying sprees when the Yankees were just awful. It was still the Yankees. You still recognize the name, the pinstripe, everything like that. But the Mets have been so bad for a long time. I always like to laugh in pop culture. It's even bad when the Mets get mentioned in pop culture as being bad. There was an episode of Family Guy where Stewie Griffin, I know most of our fans probably know the show and either love it to death or despise it, but being a religious fanatic of this show, seeing every episode, vaguely remembering Stewie Griffin saying, "This is worse than being a Mets fan." And the cutaway is, "And here's the pitch." and the season is over. That's pretty much, the story of a Mets fan. Not so fast, my friends. This is my Lee Corso moment of the day. 11 in a row by the Amazings, who we haven't seen put up numbers like this in probably 30 years since that amazing Mets team. Will they make the playoffs? It's too early to tell. But with the pitching that they've gotten from Batman, Matt Harvey, DeGarmo, guys are just coming out of nowhere. Curtis Granderson is getting the bat on the ball. Michael Kadai. I mean, just out of nowhere, these guys are just coming out of the work and going, yeah, you know what? We're going to prove to you guys that we're not a fluke. And good for them. It's about time. But, I mean, if it really took this, an 11-game win streak, and a team that started out so bad that now they're, pretty good, to ignite a Subway Series, what does that say about the series? I don't think it says that much right now.
Yeah, I think good point on that. That it's interesting that it happened at this point in the year. In July, June or July, we don't know if either of these two teams are going to be relevant. So it's neat that it kind of happened now. But I got some questions about that Mets lineup, whether they keep it up. Lorenzo, what are your thoughts on this series, these two teams? Are we looking at a potential World Series preview, or are these two teams going to fizzle out?
Well, the Subway Series is the most biggest series ever, because that's what ESPN tells us. Because according to ESPN, baseball doesn't happen outside of New York or Boston. So the fact that they keep feeding it to us, I believe in the hype. I'm going to think the Subway Series is like the biggest series ever. I'm glad to see the Mets doing well. The more Bartolo Colon, the better. If I could invite him over for brunch, I would do that. He just seems like a great guy to hang out with, and I just love his style of play. The Mets are being led by first baseman Lucas Duda, who's an Inland Empire guy from Riverside. So I'm a big fan of his as well. They're doing great. I don't think either of them will make the World Series, but it would be nice to see the Mets actually make the playoffs the first time in a long time. And to correct Michael, the World Series was in 2000 when the Yankees and Mets played against each other. And yeah, 2000. It was in 2000. I really want to see the Mets do well, get a team that hasn't been there in a while, and ultimately, get the fans of Flushing or Queens or wherever it's at, make sure that they're on board for the entire season. But yeah, it's good for baseball.
Yeah, it does get a little, let's just say, it wears me out that I think a couple weekends ago we had, the Red Sox, Yankees, and so sure enough, Friday night on MLB Network, Red Sox, Yankees. Saturday on Fox 1, Red Sox, Yankees.
Sunday Night Baseball, I think it was.
Red Sox, Yankees. And so then this week, same thing. Friday night, Mets, Yankees. Saturday afternoon, Fox Sports 1, Mets, Yankees. Sunday Night Baseball, guess what? Mets, Yankees. Look, the Yankees are interesting, A-Rod and all that, but it does. There's so much better. Hey, put the Royals on. They'll fight. There'll be a fight on TV if you put the Royals on. It's almost guaranteed.
Yeah.
So, which transitions us to the next subject, which last week we talked about the Brawling Royals and A's and how that kind of seemed to start, or at least there was some blood there from the previous year's wild card game. It was, part of the fun. It was a wild card game where the Royals came back from 4 or 5 runs late. The game went extra innings, of course, and that just ignited their run, march through the postseason to the AL pennant. So we thought, okay, two teams don't like each other. Now, kind of out of nowhere, you're getting the Royals and White Sox after, again, Yordano Ventura in the middle of it, running his mouth. You had Adam Eaton of the White Sox. Chris Sale got involved, apparently, or allegedly, going to the other team's clubhouse after the game. A ton of suspensions came out. So what are you guys' thoughts on the Royals? Are they the new bad boys of baseball? They were kind of a lovable team last postseason where everybody's behind them and George Brett was there in the booth and everything. And now, are they the enemy, or are they kind of just being made out to be the bad guy by other people starting trash? We'll start with Lorenzo this time.
Yordano Ventura is the worst guy to go against. The reason why is because if you beat him up, the guy seriously weighs about 5'9", about $150, $160. So if you beat him up, you're not proving anything. The bad thing about it, though, is he throws 100 miles an hour. So if he wants to drill somebody, he can. And luckily, he has Salvador Perez, personal bodyguard, as his catcher. So you're going to have to get through Perez just to get to Ventura. So it's going to be tough for anybody to get to him. But he's a great pitcher. He's great. He throws hard. He's a young guy. But they do have a chip on their shoulder because they play the no respect card. And they're a good team. And it's just going to get worse as the season goes along. But this is a long season. So if we're still doing this in August and September, I think a lot of the guys are going to be tired of sticking up for Ventura. It's gonna be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and the suspensions will have an effect. I mean, there's multiple pitchers, multiple players out. Of course, they don't all go out at the same time, and there's still an appeals process that Ned Yost thinks they'll rule in his favor, at least for some of the games. But if you're going to compete, we've seen it before that divisions and wild cards come down to one game. It's the last day of the season can mean something where certain teams win. The Mariners finished one game out last year. The Royals are right there. So every game matters. At some point, I think they need to think long term. Okay, you hit our guy, we hit your guy. Let's let things go, and it's not happening so far. So Michael, again, we talked the Royals last week. What are your thoughts on Ventura, the Royals, and the chip on the shoulder?
To me, it looks like I've just time warped back to the 1980s, and I'm watching the Detroit Pistons play basketball. Oh, my God. I mean, what is this? Are you guys trying? I mean, there's part of me that really likes this, obviously because of my love for violence and the game of hockey and things like that. And I love the fact that that this team is like, hey, you go after one of us, you fight us all. I love that. It's a team concept. However, there's another half of me that's going, oh, you guys are trying to be the tough guys. You guys are trying to be this team like, yeah, we're going to hit you intentionally. Now try to come after us. Almost like an identity crisis. I don't know which side of me to believe, but it sure is fun to watch. I will say that. I didn't one time I can see it with the A's. I understand that one. This White Sox one, though, I don't understand. What did the White Sox ever do to you, Kansas City? Huh? I can't, I don't know everything about baseball, but if I go back in the annals of history, if I have to go back to like the 1930s to find out what the White Sox did to the Royals, which I don't even think the Royals were around then, why the White Sox? Why are you picking on the White Sox? I mean, I can see why you A's are going at it, but why the White Sox? I mean, they're like the White Sox. I mean, they're the new Royals. Nobody knows about them. It's, watch out. The Royals may have just turned the White Sox into the new Royals for next year. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. And when is an NL East team going to get into this? When is an NL team in general going to get into this one? All we hear about is the AL Central now, and now it's the AL Central. When's the NL going to get into this?
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen there because with the NL, the pitchers have to hit. So ultimately, you're not going to have that much guts if you have to go into the batter's box yourself. That's the reason why we don't see in the NL, which I'm thinking is going to lead into David's point about Adam Wainwright, what happened yesterday as well.
So I'm getting ahead of myself. So what a perfect lead into. So that works out.
Absolutely, yeah. So just to close out the AL Central, because after all, it's the only division that matters these days. No, just kidding. It'll be interesting when the Tigers.
Hey, Twins, wake up! Bean somebody.
Right. That's how to get relevant. No, but it'll be interesting to see when the Royals and Tigers play. Of course, they're both. I think they're 1-2 in the entire American League right now as far as overall record goes. And of course, they battled last year. It won't take much to ignite that powder keg if they. They'll play each other. They'll play each other something like 18 times mathematically. Several batters will get hit by pitches. And then one team's going to think, oh, we got to retaliate, and then off they go again. So that'll be a good one to watch. But as Lorenzo mentioned, and we talked at the top of the show, Adam Wainwright, news is breaking that he has a pretty serious lower leg injury on the ankle or Achilles. It's looking like he might be out for the entire season, which would be a real shame just for baseball fans in general, because the Cardinals are always a team that's there, and that they're going to need their ace in that competitive NL Central. And of course, he did it apparently when he was batting. He was leaving the batter's box after hitting a ball either in play or out of play, and something happened. He got pulled from the game, and if you read the quotes kind of around the clubhouse of the Cardinals, the players know it's pretty serious. There's no official reports on what it is, but they're kind of hanging their heads low, and it's not looking good. So kind of two questions here. What do the Cardinals do without Wainwright? Can they compete in the NL Central and for the NL pennant? And as well as, here's yet another injury of a pitcher batting. Certainly the Cardinals would just prefer Wainwright make an out every at-bat and get hurt batting. Is it time to reconsider the pitcher's batting and go to a full DH? Everybody says it's going to happen eventually. I don't know. But is it good for baseball to have pitchers get hurt when batting? I guess that's the question. And we'll start with Lorenzo.
I'm not a fan of pitchers batting. I'm there to get entertained. And the more Billy Butler, the more Evan Gaddis, guys that'll just go up there and hack, that's what I want to see. So, and I don't want to see a pitcher go up and try and hit, take 3 strikes really fast and go sit down. I don't want to see that. I want to see some guys trying to hit bombs or strike out looking bad. That's what I want to see. As far as the Cardinals go, they're a team that just has a lot of prospects still available. So Adam Wainwright goes down, they'll just fill a spot. I'm sure there's some guy in Louisville, their AAA affiliate, if that's their still affiliate, that's going to come up, do well. Cardinals are a great franchise. Of course, they're the best fans in baseball, so they'll do fine. I'm not worried about Adam Wainwright going down. It's going to hurt, but ultimately they're still being the thick of the wild card. And in that division, nobody's really going to run away with it. So ultimately it's not going to hurt that bad.
Yeah, I think the division is still there's a lot of good teams, but no great teams per se, at least yet have established. Like you said, they've always got talent down there. You know, last year they missed Michael Wacha for a good part of the season with some injury. If he's back and healthy, he can be that guy. If they make the postseason, I think the biggest problem they'll have is, you know, in the postseason you got to have big aces at the top of your rotation to compete against the Kershaws and the Matt Harveys and the Strasburgs and the Scherzers, if those are the teams they play. So getting ahead of ourselves, assuming all those teams make the postseason, but they can get through the regular season, still compete, and maybe by then he's back. We don't know yet. So Michael, what are your thoughts on the Cardinals prospects as well as pitchers getting hurt when batting?
Well, for starters, this really puts a damper in my fantasy team that was already starting to be hampered by injuries. I mean, if this guy goes all Kobe Bryant on me right now, then, you know, I'm totally screwed. And me being a Lakers fan, I'm screwed. I've been screwed for the last, 2 years.
Right.
So maybe even longer than that. It's been probably 4 years since we've, but I digress. This would have been a great time for them to have, oh, hey, Shelby Miller. Let's put you in. Oh, wait a minute.
Right.
No, I actually love that, though. Thank you, Cardinals fans, for Shelby Miller. I love you guys. But no, this is going to be a time where John Lackey, yes, John Lackey, look at me right here. I know you're never going to watch this, so it's a perfect time for me to call you out. Step your game up, man. This is your time now. This is your spot to go, hey, I will put this team, I will take this spot, and I will do the best that I can. Because that's what you guys pay me to do. I mean, you've been a number one somewhere before. You can do this, man. I mean, what is this funk that you're in right now? I mean, what are you, 1-2? And you've struck out 9 people? I mean, come on, man. You pitch way better than this. I mean, come on. This is a class act organization. This is a deep organization. They knew what they were doing when they traded away a guy like Shelby Miller, who's a great young pitcher, for Jason Hayward, who has not looked the same since the thumb. Although I do think that the change of scenery is doing Jay Hay some good. It seems it's worked out for both teams. But my biggest thing is I'm with Lorenzo. I hate the pitcher batting, especially when it's 2 on, 2 out, and in a clutch situation you have the pitcher who's batting, I don't know, not even a buck. He's not even batting 100. I mean, he's 2 for his last 35, and all he can really do is sacrifice a guy over. Get the DH in there in the whole league. I mean, how else is a guy like David Ortiz going to make a paycheck? I mean, come on. David Ortiz wants to stay around forever? That's fine. Let him DH. Let him be the next Julio Franco. I want to see David Ortiz at 55 hitting home runs in Boston. Let's make it happen. DH the whole damn league.
So I'll provide at least some counterpoint. As a Houston Astros fan, of course, we played in the National League for almost 50 years, and the pitcher bats in the National League. Now we're switched to the American League. It's been an adjustment for Astros fans. Certainly it's a concept well known, and there was interleague play for over a decade, so we're familiar with the DH. But there was always that bit of strategy when you're sitting there looking at, okay, what pitcher's coming in when? When's that pitcher spot coming up? And a lot of times it's not, okay, we can just get to the pitcher spot. It's like, well, you're going to get a pinch hitter in that spot. Would you rather face right-handed pinch hitter or left-handed pinch hitter? Who are they going to roll out? And I remember, I might have said this before, my dad, I were at a game a long time ago, and Tony Gwynn wasn't starting that game. And so the whole game we're sitting on pins and needles like, when are they going to bring in Gwynn? When are they going to pinch hit with Gwynn? Because you knew if he's in the lineup, you know exactly when he's coming up. Otherwise, you got the weapons on the bench to come out. I still like it different in both leagues. I do think it's a shame when pitchers get hurt. I also remember that year that Shimen Wong got hurt, the Yankees pitcher in Houston, back when Houston was the National League team, and Steinbrenner went off and said, it's a joke, and when is the National League going to grow up and get the designated hitter? And my counterpoint to that is, when is all the other teams in the league going to grow up and get roofs on their stadiums? Because it's ridiculous to have to wait for a rain delay in this day and age when you put on a roof. But I've digressed.
Well, here's my thing, Dave.
Yeah.
Either you DH the whole league, or you make the entire league hit with the pitcher in the ninth hole.
But that will never happen because the players.
I get the strategy point. I get that, but that's either either bring it back to the old school and you have everybody do it so there's strategy throughout the whole entire game, or you do like Lorenzo said, you bring the entertainment value, which puts asses in the seats, and you bring in the hacker who sits up there and you either the fifth or sixth spot and gets 3 curveballs and can't do anything with it and looks like Pedro Serrano from Major League.
I think if it's going to go either way, it'll be DH across the board. I mean, there's too many guys like Edgar Martinez and, of course, David Ortiz and Paul Molitor, even though he played defensively well for several years. But Frank Thomas at the end of his career, where they're still fun to watch hit. So you'll still have a DH somewhere. But for my money, I hope the National League doesn't go to it. It's old-fashioned baseball. I already commented about what I think the Cardinals' prospects are. I think they'll be okay in the regular season, but we'll see about the postseason. One other thing to think about is now, does this bring a Cole Hamels trade discussion in? If Wainwright's out for the year, I bet that the Cardinals look to make a move. Maybe a guy like a John Lackey, I know they already have him, but a veteran guy like that, where they can make a move for Hamels.
And let's not forget Justin Masterson. I mean, they acquired Justin Masterson last year from the Cleveland Indians, and if my memory serves me correct, he didn't go anywhere else. The guy was in the bullpen last playoffs. I mean, pull the guy out of the bullpen. There's a guy you can put in, as your 4th starter, or even a back-end 5th starter, or maybe even as a 3rd starter. I mean, the guy did wonders in Cleveland when that was all Cleveland had. I mean, he's not a bad pitcher. I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Get the guy some time, man.
Yeah, they've got depth. They'll find guys to pitch there. So we'll wrap up the show.
You're never worried about the Cardinals. Cardinals are always one of those teams where you're like, oh, adversity. They'll get through it.
As Lorenzo said, top-notch organization. They'll reload. They always got a AAA roster full of guys ready to plug in. They'll be ready to go. So we'll wrap up the show with our non-baseball topic. And this week, Thursday, I think, they kind of moved it on us. But I think Thursday night is the first round of the NFL draft. A lot of names bannered about. You got Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, I think Leonard Williams, the defensive player. Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the first overall pick. If you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who would you draft, or would you trade your draft pick? And we'll start kind of in the southeast with Michael on this one.
If I were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers general manager, I would find a new job. But that's just me personally. Look, this is one of those things where it doesn't matter who is the general manager for Tampa Bay. It's going to be Jameis Winston, and there's going to be no real question about it. I know everybody – I don't want that to happen, but it's going to happen because he's a Florida kid. He went to a Florida school. It just seems only fitting, kind of like Blake Bortles last year, that he goes to a Florida team. Having said that, the off-the-field issues to me are still a huge red flag. And until you fully find out if he was or was not comped for that shrimp, there's just too many questions. Yeah, the guy's got an arm. Shrimp, the seafood, until he gets comped for the seafood. Yeah, the guy has talent. The guy has tremendous talent. I get to be a leader. We saw when Florida State won the national title. But when you took away the weapons that went in the draft, like a Kelvin Benjamin to Carolina, you took away, graduating seniors on an offensive line. Jameis looked somewhat human last year. You've got Mike Williams, and that's about it. Lovie Smith was always a defensive coach. Why not take 1 to 2, maybe even 3, and take Leonard Williams? Why not, man? I mean, you're Lovie Smith. You had one of the most ferocious defenses in Chicago since the '85 Bears when you guys went to the Super Bowl in '06. You can do it, man. But as much as I hate to say it, Shameless Jameis is going #1, and there's not a damn thing we can do about it.
I think it's the way it's going. What about you, Lorenzo? What do you think about who should they take, and what would you do with that pick?
What they should do is they should trade down, get multiple draft picks. Williams will probably be available even at the number 3 spot or even the number 4 spot. That's what they should do. But what they're really going to do is they're just going to draft Jameis Winston, to Michael's point, the Florida kid. He'll do well over there, and that's what the fans want. And unfortunately, Lovie Smith, he's a defensive guy. That's what makes sense to get Williams in there. But Jameis Winston will get picked first. Mariota will pick second, and then probably Williams will get picked third.
Yeah, looking at both Mariota and Winston, I see a couple of really quarterbacks with college skills that I'm not sure are going to translate. Sometimes they do. Russell Wilson was kind of that college quarterback that wasn't the pro type, and he's flourished. You've seen other guys not. My concern about Winston was how many games last year that they just got behind. They came out flat. He wasn't playing well. And then they would just kind of turn it on, get a couple lucky bounces, and pull it out. Of course, in the NFL, it's not going to work. Can he be a guy to take control of the game early? I don't know. I don't see a good #1 overall, so if I was the Bucs, I'd trade down. And I might still look for a Winston or Mariota if they slip past the top 2 spots. I think Williams is a good option, too. For my money, I think the best football player in the draft is Amari Cooper. That being said, you just don't take wide receivers #1. It takes them a little while to adjust, and in today's game, it's not really.
Let's not forget.
Yeah, go.
Let's not forget. This is not like you were saying, Dave. This is not a deep draft, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. And Mariota being, as athletic as the guy is, there's also major questions there. Aside from the fact that no Oregon quarterback that has been drafted has actually worked out in the NFL, going back to Joey Harrington,
Right.
Achilles Smith, Dennis Dixon. Can you sense a pattern here? I think,
Right.
Obviously Mariota seems to buck the trend because he, seems more athletic than these guys. But, hey, you give me Mariota's arm, I can hit a wide receiver that's all the way open 65 yards downfield. Can he make the throw when you're in triple, when you've got a wide receiver 185, 190 pounds in triple coverage like Jake Delhomme did against the Seattle Seahawks to Steve Smith? Can you make those throws? They don't exactly do the zone read in the NFL anymore. Yeah, you run out of shotgun a lot, but there's just too many questions with both guys.
Yeah, I just don't see a clear. All things being equal, I'll take Mariota for the experience in college. He played with the 3 full seasons, and then the head on his shoulders. I think he's a kid who can learn. Jameis Winston has all the questions, some of his character and some of his ability to adjust. Well, I appreciate you guys joining me today. It's been another great episode of Diamond Kings. For Lorenzo Mejia and Michael Prosser, I'm David Whitlock, and we'll see you next week on Diamond Kings.